Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, "Well, this is Red Lobster, and we do things the Red Lobster way," said by my manager before navigating us by the book straight into a blizzard of crap. This happened several years ago, and I am forever relieved I don't work in a restaurant anymore. Solidarity to all kitchen workers for the endless BS you have to deal with. At the time, I was working in the kitchen as an assembler. This can be one of the most clutch positions on the line, as you take all the food being prepared by the other cooks and organize it into tickets that can be taken out into the dining room. Accordingly, it is often a bottleneck for food leaving the kitchen. If you have a slow assembler, cooked food dies under the heating lamps. Grilled salmon dries out, fries become soggy, linguine alfredo hardens into concrete, really horrific crap. It is imperative that food not sit in the window. I was working a weekday lunch shift, which is normally pretty slow. We must have provoked the wrath of the restaurant gods on this day though, because out of nowhere the store got hit with a tsunami of customers. I could just barely make out the other cooks through the clouds of shrimp scampi, fryer grease, and cheddar bay biscuits flying through the air. I knew the crap blizzard was headed my direction and began putting empty plates up in the window with the shape of each ticket that was to leave the kitchen, a technique I had learned to help survive BS like this. On the other side of the window, coordinating the servers, was my manager. Shouldn't use his real name. Actually, let's call him Bob instead. Bob was hyperactive and had an irritating tendency to micromanage kitchen processes, a problem compounded by his not knowing how the duck to run a kitchen. When I began putting empty plates in the window so that the incoming, interstellar-sized wave of seafood had something to land on, he stopped me. "What are you doing?" Bob asked. "I'm putting the plates in their sides in the window because we're about to have a very high volume of food coming through," I replied. "Well, this is Red Lobster, and here we do the things the Red Lobster way. We plate the food when the food is ready, and we don't put sides on early." I tried explaining that the Red Lobster way was designed by sentient suits and ties physically incapable of holding a spatula, that our sacred way, as dictated in the good book of employee training, had died in the trenches of last year's endless shrimp special, that, while I appreciated the job, I wasn't prepared for an honorable death at the hands of this rush in order to uphold its most obscure tenets. But he wasn't having any of it. Bob insisted that I take the plates out of the window and only pass him plates and tickets that were 100% completed. Knowing full well that Bob was flying us by the book into a storm of crap, I put on a feces-resistant raincoat, rubbed some Vicks under my nose, and braced for impact. 30 minutes later, the window was chaos. Finished food was left dying in the wings of the window, while I, swiftly enough to avoid reprimand, but with the fatalistic, mechanical movement of a flood pump removing water at a fraction of the rate at which it's arriving, plated up one finished ticket at a time. Bob was equal parts confused and furious, like a toddler whose toy was suddenly taken away. "What's this food waiting on?" he cried, gesturing towards a shriveled-up steak and its associated sides. "Well, that order is waiting on some fried shrimp, and I need to wait for the ticket to be complete before I plate it up." "Why is the ticket missing fried shrimp?" "Unfortunately, I'm not manning the fryer, sir, so I don't know." This continued for the better part of an hour. After the rush had passed and I was dumping its precipitated, liquid crap from my galoshes, Bob approached me with the twitchy, nervous energy of a coked-up boxer or a hyper-caffeinated, insecure manager who needed to assert his dominance over the underpaid crew of some bunk-ass seafood restaurant. "Can I, speak to you in the walk-in for a moment?" "Sure thing." We walked to the cooler as I struggled to remember how to fight off an attacker armed with a kitchen knife from my days in dish. "So, what happened back there?" Bob asked, arms folded, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "You said we should follow the system, and we did," I replied, mentally noting that he was standing in front of the walk-in's only exit. But there were a lot of missed items on those tickets. We had food dying in the window. I saw it, yeah, it was pretty bad. "So why was the food missing?" "I don't know, I wasn't cooking the food, I was assembling it. I am the assembler." This line of questioning continued, with Bob trying to somehow pin the catastrophe of the last hour on my willingness to comply with his orders, while I blithely insisted that I did exactly what was asked of me. After not being able to move past this point for several minutes, Bob made some sweeping statement about doing better next time and left. Incidentally, the next time I was assembling and Bob was on the other side of the window. Nothing was said about the Red Lobster way, and the rush went smoother, albeit with some hotter plates and servers having to return for delayed items. I guess we ended up doing better after all. Next one is titled, Karen, the building manager, probably regrets her wording. I live in a housing cooperative. I have no idea if there is something equivalent in other countries, but I live in Norway. It's essentially where you own your own apartment, but the cooperative owns the buildings and the land. If you're going to make changes to the building, you'll have to apply for a permit. Otherwise, it's generally do as you please, as long as you don't bother your neighbors. Anyways, I put up a small greenhouse on my private patio, as many others had done, but not this exact type. This was an aluminum construction, not a frame with a loose plastic cover kind. The building manager, who is best described as a triple Karen, threw a fit. She actually watched me spending 3 days assembling the greenhouse. Then the next day she called me and threw a fit. Not because I put up a greenhouse, but because I had used screws to fasten it to the patio for stability. Apparently, I was not allowed to use screws on the floorboards, as this was considered changes to the building in her mind, and I had destroyed the floorboards. Never mind, the whole patio was built with, wait for it, screws, though the floorboards. Screws in the wall were okay, she told me in response to me asking about why she put up shelves on her patio herself, but not the floorboards. Apparently, the difference was monumental, and everyone should just know this intuitively. Nowhere, literally nowhere, does it say fastening things to the floorboards or putting screws in the floorboards is not allowed. Not in the house rules, my contract, or in the National Housing Cooperatives law. But she was furious I had done this. I took a deep breath, and as I'm quite creative, I immediately thought of a workaround. I'll just put it on wheels then. I made a big number of saying that fastening was essential, because otherwise the greenhouse would not be stable enough to withstand wind. She said she understood this, but I had now ruined the co-op's property. And this was a really serious matter. She told me to send an application for a permit, to see if she could find a way to get approval from the board. My application was rejected, as I anticipated. But she worded the rejection exactly as I hoped she would. I was not allowed to put in a fastened greenhouse, and she probably thought she'd been clever when she included that I was not allowed to put the greenhouse on my front lawn neither. I had worked the "it needs to be fastened to be stable" angle hard because I hoped she, as the Karen she is, would fall for that reverse psychology. So I proceeded to put the greenhouse on wheels. I made a frame from 2x4s and put 8 small furniture wheels under the frame. I then lifted and screwed the greenhouse onto the frame. I put some boards on the sides, just above the ground, to stop the draft. Boom! Mobile greenhouse. I can slide it all over the patio. I put some hooks in the walls and used transport straps to secure the whole thing to the wall for stability. The walls were okay to put screws in, remember. So, in effect, my greenhouse is now in the exact same location, 4 inches taller, and with ugly blue ribbons tying it to the wall. And the patio now has 22 open screw holes, ready to be filled with rainwater in the fall. But oh well, as she's repeatedly told me, it's not my patio. Then I sent an orientation email to the building manager with photos and videos of the sliding greenhouse, with the rest of the board members on copy, where I explained in detail what I had done and how every step was in compliance with the rejection email I had received, which I of course included. I said the greenhouse was now to be considered a piece of mobile patio furniture, just like my sofa and chairs were, and that I now considered this subject to be a closed matter. I have not heard a single word from any of them. It's been over a week. I think I got her. I can't imagine she'll find a loophole that lets her legally dictate what patio furniture is allowed and not in the co-op, since the patios are stated to be for every apartment owner's private usage. So, when Christmas comes, I'm planning to decorate the greenhouse with lights. Make it pretty. Because every time Karen steps out of her front door, she has to face my patio where she is looking straight at my greenhouse. The least I can do is make it pretty for her, right? Edit. Some background. I'm a 39 female. I've lived here for 10 years without a single complaint. Karen is the new building manager. Being the Karen she is, which means highly narcissistic female, she's using my greenhouse as a way to establish her newfound authority. Make an example. I didn't get her permission, so the greenhouse got to go. It's not about the holes. It was just the only argument she could use to get me to take it down, especially since I had argued hard that it needed to be fastened for stability. And I'm going to take care of the holes. I'll either fix the holes or change the few damaged floorboards, and I told her this on the phone. The damage is no big deal either way. The greenhouse is my therapy. I suffer from PTSD. So, keeping my therapy is kind of a big deal to me. Not trying to get sympathy, just saying why I decided to fight her on this. Next one is titled, Send Me Out as an Errand Boy Because Everyone Else Is Too Lazy to Go. Enjoy lost sales. This actually happened a couple weeks ago. I work for a company that processes highly perishable items and delivers them to grocery stores. One of the products we sell requires butter. Like clockwork, as soon as the warehouse gets low on butter, they send me out to pick some up from a supply store. I work in an office and it's not my job, nor is it my responsibility to pick up ingredients for the warehouse. But every time they send me because everyone else, including managers, are too lazy to go. The supply store we go to requires a membership card to enter the building. That card has been lost for months, and the managers keep forgetting to get a replacement card. So, each time I go, I have to acquire a temporary day pass. The last few times I went there, they have been warning me that they will no longer offer day passes, and the only person who can acquire a new membership card is the person whose name is on the account, who happens to be one of my supervisors. I have been warning him over and over that he needs a new card because they will stop letting me in the building. Each time, I am given the same answer. I'll go when I have time. Fast forward to today. The warehouse is once again in need of butter, and they once again asked me to pick it up because they are too lazy to go. This time, I did not remind them about needing a membership card, because I have told them about it several times and they are too lazy to take care of it. So, I wait until nearly the end of my shift to attempt to buy the butter, and I was told once again that I need a membership card and will not be allowed inside, just as I expected. Afterwards, I returned to the office, telling my supervisor I was unsuccessful because, as I've stated several times, they are no longer offering day passes. It's now past 9 p.m., and everyone else has gone home. My supervisor had nothing else to say as he knew this was his mistake for being lazy, and at this point it's too late to go to the supply store because it's rush hour traffic, and by the time he would get there it will be closed. Because of his laziness, they were not able to buy the butter in bulk and had to tell the customer that we will be short on that item. Easily a few $1,000s worth of sales lost, due to lazy managers who think they are too important to do anything. After that, they stopped asking me to pick up butter. Next one is titled, Gonna Ignore My Directions. Okay, let's go the wrong way. This was a few years ago now. I had just finished a show in the summer. Along with the family I live with, my dad and aunt had also seen the show. This was a big deal because they'd never seen my shows even when I lived with my dad and my aunt lived across the country. After the show, everyone was getting into cars, and I was told I had to go with my dad and aunt in their car. I wasn't too pleased, as I always felt uncomfortable talking to them. I'm treated like a child who doesn't know anything, ignored or straight up scolded for speaking. I was 17 at the time but treated the same as I was when I was 9. I was not ready to make a fuss, so I got in the car and my aunt asked me if I could give directions because they didn't know the town. The town was pretty big. It's almost the size of a city. I went to college there, so I knew it pretty well. Of course, I agreed that I would help. Then I'm told I could be quiet because they had a sat-nav up so I didn't have to talk all the time. They pulled out of the car park and followed the main road into town as the sat-nav said to turn left. I could hear them trying to figure out which turn off as there were two. One went to the train station and the other the road we needed. I tried to say which turn it was and was ignored. Tried to say again, but a little louder so they could hear me, and the response was, "For God's sake, we have the sat-nav, you don't need to talk. Just shut up." Okay. I was not expecting that harsh of a response, but that is where my malicious compliance came in. You want me to be quiet? Okay, I will be quiet. I won't say we just missed the turn. I sat there happy and quiet as I heard their frustration. Realizing the next turn was a one-way street, meaning they would have to turn right, I didn't say anything. I decided to sit there in full silence until they got to the other side of town while they were growing frustrated at the directions. After a good while of my silence, I decided to break it saying, "You can go that way to get back." I was asked how I know and I said, "I go to college here. This is my bus route. I know the town." So after doubting me for a few seconds, they decided to follow my directions. This is not the end of my compliance though. I acted perfectly happy and calm as I gave them the directions to go back the right way, but I decided to leave out the fact that I waited until we got to the second road that leads us back to my mom's house, but I took them all the way back to the other route. So I lead them back all the way through town. I told them I knew the way and I told them which road to go down and was yelled at to be quiet. So that is exactly what I did, and I never felt so much power watching them drive around with no clue where to go whilst I knew every street. It was an extra 30 minutes onto the car ride, but I don't regret any of it. Last one is titled, We Were Malicious to Ourselves. When I was in the Army, we had things we called mandatory fun days, days of scheduled team building activities like sports and barbecues, etc. It was actually really cool of the leadership to give us a day off once in a while and plan these events, but if we were given the choice, 90% of us would rather take the day off. Hence the term mandatory fun. At one of these events, the whole battalion had a barbecue in a park, and they surprised us by hiring a company to bring a big trailer full of cold beer on tap. Of course, it came with a safety briefing that laid down some ground rules. Nobody under 21 could have a single sip. Anyone who got belligerently drunk would pull extra duty for a month, and the battalion commander would personally make sure that anyone who had alcohol-related incidents, i.e., drunk driving, beating your spouse, etc., would be punished to the full extent. Other than that, we could drink as much beer as we wanted. My platoon sergeant knew this was probably a bad idea. He'd been in the Army a long time and knew that with a blank check like that, most of us would be drinking until we passed out. Soldiers are known with drinking responsibly in the same way that Mexican drug cartels are known for their kindness and mercy. He told us that we could drink as much as we wanted that afternoon, but we would be waking up extra early the next morning for an 8-mile run. Challenge accepted. We complied and drank as much as we wanted, which for a bunch of soldiers in their early 20s was somewhere between way too much and alcohol poisoning. The next morning, we were all feeling sorry for ourselves and cursing our own maliciousness as we left an 8-mile trail of vomit alongside the road. Mine was bright yellow. Thanks for listening.